Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is honestly a massive paradigm shift in artificial intelligence. We're moving way beyond the basic building blocks of AI and stepping into this completely new era of how systems process information. We're going to deconstruct the very nature of how data actually transforms into something we can rely on, and we'll break it down step by step.
Knowledge becomes useful long before it becomes certain. Let that philosophical weight sink in for a second. In our daily lives, and definitely in our data systems, we rarely have the luxury of absolute 100% certainty before we have to make a call or take action. We act on useful knowledge all the time. But that raises a massive question for the information age. If the knowledge isn't entirely certain, what actually makes it useful?
Which brings us to part 1, the weight of context. Let's explore the invisible force operating behind the scenes of every single piece of data we encounter, the exact force that makes even uncertain information incredibly valuable.
So what gives it weight is context. The absolutely crucial point here is that data, all on its own, is just sort of floating out there. It's raw, it's unanchored, and frankly, it's incredibly lightweight. Context is the anchor. Context is the environment, the background, the whole surrounding situation that grabs a piece of raw, floating data and pulls it down to earth, turning it into something we can actually use to make a solid decision.
Think about the human experience for a moment. We do this instinctively every single day. Imagine hearing the exact same statement, literally the identical string of words. Now, if that statement comes as advice from someone with years of proven experience, it carries profound meaning, right? It has real gravity. But imagine hearing those exact same words as just something you caught in passing from a total stranger on the street. It feels completely different, doesn't it? The words are identical, but the weight has entirely shifted.
So why does it feel so different? Well, it's not because the words changed. It's because the history behind them changed. It's the history of the data, the exact path it took to get to you, that matters just as much as the data itself. When you change the history, you change the fundamental meaning of the entire message. And this deeply human trait can actually be formalized like this. Source becomes signal. This right here is the human standard. We don't even realize we're doing it, but it's a subtle process that shapes our judgment every single day. We look at the origin of the info, we instinctively review its history, and then we turn that source into a signal that tells us exactly how to act.
Okay, moving on to part 2, the machine blind spot. We've established how we humans operate, but what about the digital systems we've actually built?
Well, there's a pretty stark contrast here. On one side, we have that rich human instinct where the source becomes a signal. But traditional machines, they never had that layer. They just learn patterns. They detect correlations. They are absolute mathematical powerhouses, right? Sifting through mountains of data just to figure out how variable A connects to variable B. But there's a massive piece of the puzzle missing in that traditional model.
They rarely understand the history attached to what they learned. They've got the pattern down, sure, but they are completely disconnected from the origin. They can tell you exactly what the data says, but they are totally blind to where it came from or the history behind the numbers. And as we've just seen, without the history, the data doesn't carry any true weight.
So how do we fix it? That brings us to part 3, the new model. Let's look at the specific technological solution being built right now to tackle this exact machine blind spot.
Kadada is actually building toward a completely different model. They're pioneering a system designed specifically to bridge this giant gap between human instinctive judgment and machine processing. In this new model, systems are being designed to learn far, far more than just what information exists in a given database.
This is where the whole system transforms. In this new model, machines are taught to learn 4 absolutely critical things about the data. First, where it came from, the absolute origin, the raw source. Second, how it was validated, like what was the actual process used to fact-check this information. Third, how reliable it has been over time. This is that historical track record we were talking about earlier. Does this data hold up week after week, year after year? And finally, the ultimate culmination, how much confidence it actually deserves. By processing the origin, the validation, and that historical reliability, the machine can actually assign a confidence weight to the information. It's exactly like humans do instinctively when we value proven experience over just a passing rumor.
Which leads us perfectly into part 4, where trust begins. This is where all of these concepts finally converge.
This brilliantly illustrates the fundamental shift we're talking about. The old way, it treats memory as just storage. It's basically a hard drive holding information, just sitting there waiting to detect a pattern.
But true intelligence fundamentally changes when memory stops acting like a passive storage unit and starts acting like active context. It's no longer just holding data, it's holding the history, the validation, and the real confidence score of that data.
The whole evolution really boils down to these three crucial steps. Step 1, patterns create predictions. That's the traditional machine. It sees a correlation, it guesses what comes next. Cool, but we need to go further. Step 2, context creates judgment. When you add the history and the source into the mix, the system isn't just predicting anymore. It's actively judging the weight and validity of the information, just like we do. And finally, step 3, judgment is where trust begins. Think about it. We can't trust a system that only makes blind predictions based on raw storage. We can only begin to trust a system when it proves it can judge information based on real context.
Which leaves us with a pretty vital question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. If judgment is where trust begins, is your data just storage or is it context? Think about the systems you rely on every single day. Are they just blindly holding on to raw data, or are they actually understanding the history behind it? It's a massive shift in how we think about intelligence, and it is absolutely going to redefine our relationship with information. Thanks so much for joining me to explore this one, and hey, keep asking the right questions about your data.